Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Kyo. Today I will be sharing with you this motherboard coming from ASRock, known as the X670E Steel Legend. And this is meant for AMD 7000 series. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Tech Dynamic who have sponsored this motherboard to me. And to be honest, this is my very first time doing an overview of a motherboard. I'll try my best to actually cover all the areas, so let's begin. These are the items that is inside the box itself: the motherboard, which is the main character, and the instruction manual. And inside it comes with a simple instruction to install the 7000 series processor onto this 1718 socket, and a postcard. It's provided with this Wi-Fi antenna, a set of SATA cable. One is straight, the other one is a right angle. Two Velcro stripes for you to do cable management. A keycap. 4 M.2 screws. And one M.2 standoff. In fact, most of the standoff is actually on the motherboard itself. And this package here, right, this is the supporting GPU bracket, which is mounted on the motherboard itself. This is how the motherboard look like. I will start off with the connection at the bottom of the motherboard, starting from the left. Let me just zoom in. This is meant for your front I/O audio connection, a 12V RGB connector, a 5V addressable RGB connector, a 5-pin Thunderbolt connector, two 4-pin PWM fan headers. This is not listed on the manual. I wouldn't know what this is for. Followed by a clear CMOS pin. Now, if you were to short these two pins together for 5 seconds and release, whatever settings you have done on the motherboard, it will be resetted to default. Next will be this two, which is the 2.0 USB header. This is a USB 3.2 Generation 1 header. Another 4-pin PWM fan header. And this section over here is meant for you to connect your reset switch, your power switch, your hard disk LEDs, your power LEDs. Moving to the front itself, you will be ushered with 4 SATA ports. And these are hidden, as in the armor shield is covering the SATA port, which makes it neat when you look at it through the tempered glass of your case. Now, this 4 SATA port is meant for you to connect either 2.5-inch SSD or 3.5-inch hard disk. You can have 4 to connect either one of them. Next will be this 3.2 Generation 2 Type-C connector for your front I/O, and another USB 3.2 Generation 1 header. Next will be a 24-pin socket whereby you plug the 24-pin cable off from your PSU to this port to supply power to all this area over here. Next will be the error post code, whereby this will light up if there is anything wrong with the processor, the RAMs, the external graphic card and such. So once this is lit up, right, you will need to troubleshoot them. Followed by two 5V addressable RGB over here at the top. Two 4-pin PWM fan headers, and to the extreme right, these are the two EPS 8-pin connector where you draw the power from your PSU and plug it to here. That supply the power to your VRMs and to your CPU. In fact, one is enough. Plug one. If you want to plug two, right, unless you are doing LN2 overclocking, so probably you will need more voltage, but in normal usage, one will be enough. Looking at the rear, these are all the connections that's provided. I'll start off with the DisplayPort version 1.4, and right below it is the HDMI version 2.1 port. Now, both of these ports support 4K resolution. Besides this port, this is the Wi-Fi 6E adapter, which is built in, and this adapter has a Bluetooth function too. Next will be the BIOS flashback button. Next will be the USB connectors over here. You have total of 11 Type A USB port and 1 Type C USB port. The black ones are version 2. The blue ones over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, is version 3.2 generation 1 with a bandwidth of 5 GB per second. And this blue port over here is version 3.2 generation 2 with a bandwidth of 10 GB per second. And for this Type C is version 3.2 generation 2 times 2 with a bandwidth of 20 GB per second. And moving up from the USB port, you have a dual LAN, which is known as the RJ45 LAN. The first port is catered for bandwidth of 1 gig. The second port is catered for 2.5 gig. Now, to the extreme right, these are the audio ports where you have the microphone in, speaker out, and the optical out, which is the SPDIF. This is a 8-layer PCB motherboard whereby you make use of Dr. Moore 60M smart power stage, and the power phase is 16 plus 2 plus 1. And right beneath these two big heatsinks are the VRMs, and they are made of Nichicon 12K black caps. And both of this armor heatsink are aluminium. Now moving on to this socket here, which is the 1718, where you can see that the pins are beneath here. Next are the DIMM slot over here. Do note that this only take DDR5 RAMs and not DDR4. Now, there are a total of 4 DIMM RAMs over here, and they are enforced with this metal plating, which are shouldered to the motherboard itself, so that it will give rigidity to the DIMM holders, which are plastic, so it is firm, not easily break. Now, besides this, right, it does take dual channel and up to 128 GB of RAMs. And it does take XMP profile or Expo profile, and up to a RAM speed of 6600. For the PCIe connection, starting from the top, where you have this metal casting to protect the slot itself. This is majority of us will slot our GPU card. This is a PCIe 5.0 slot with X16, then followed by this, which is actually a PCIe 3.0 X1. And the last one is a PCIe 3.0 X16. But this you can run generation 4, not a problem. Now, on the M.2 itself, there are a total of 4 M.2. First off, with this blazing M.2, which is at the top, this is meant for generation 5, or you can run a generation 4, not an issue. And with this said, over here, you can plug in another M.2 over here, which is Gen 4. And at the bottom here, there are 2 more, which is meant for Generation 4. And all this are with this armor plate for the top and the bottom to absorb the heat. Else for the center, you do not have that. So take note on this. Now, besides this, right, I missed out one of the 4-pin PWM, where you can see over here, there's one hidden over here, which is a 4-pin PWM fan header. This is just a live demo of the UEFI of the motherboard itself, and I'm having the latest one, which is actually version 1.11.ASO3. Now, it will tell you all the stats over here at the main. Basically, this is in advanced mode. It doesn't have a basic mode and an advanced mode like some other motherboards. I like this interface itself because it just goes straight to the advanced mode, whereby you can go to the OC tweaking. And one thing good about this board is that you have the performance preset where you can set PBO2 enable, or you can control the temperature of the motherboard, or should I say the system, from going up all the way to 95 degrees Celsius, which most of the 7950X will do. And besides this, right, you can automatically set the curve optimizer, which is down here. So it depends on how good your chip is. Mine, I can go minus 20, but I can't go minus 30. If I go minus 30, right, the system will crash. So I can do this way, limiting the temperature to go max at 85 degrees Celsius, or I can set it to limit at 75 degrees Celsius. So this is one of the good points about this interface over here. Then the rest, I believe that for overclockers, right, you will know what interface is this. Then you can set the Infinity Fabric if you want to, and all this stuff over here, which I will not touch, but probably those overclockers will do. Then talking about the external voltage itself, right, you can set the offset of your vCore, even your SoC voltage, you can do that. Then you can set, taking a look at the levels, right, there's only 3 levels, which is quite easy. So for me, right, normally I'll choose level 2, but most of the time I set it just as auto, because I've not really built this system yet. So this is the interface of the OC tweaker. At advanced mode, the CPU configuration, you can set all this configuration if you want to. And if you want to do firmware, right, probably I would say that switch this off, disable before you do the firmware. Now, besides this, you have the PCI-E configuration. This is where you do the resize bar on your RTX graphic card to enable them. So these are the settings itself. Next will be the onboard devices configuration. Now for me, right, I prefer to disable things that I do not need to use, things like the HD audio, because I'm using the audio interface. So I will just turn it off. Or if you want, right, if you're always on the onboard LAN 2.5 gig, right, you can turn this 1 gig off, because it's like saving power, so you're giving more power to your system to perform. And by disabling this, right, in fact, you will tone down the temperature, as in like these things will not generate heat and will, you know, reside within your system itself inside the case. Then besides this, you have the storage configuration. I do not have all this SATA port. If you do have, right, you can set it to I mean this over here, you can set it to hot swap, whereby you can unplug the SATA, I mean hard drive, right, instantly. Through Windows, you just set the eject button, you can pull it off, not a problem. The only thing I have is actually only one M.2, which is this. Okay, and of course you can run RAID if you want to. Not going to touch on that. Now, besides this, right, the ACPI configuration, which I always use because of this PCI device power on. This is whereby network people would like to do this as like remote wake up on LAN. So when they are actually outside, you know, from their PC itself, right? I mean, somewhere outside, not at home. So you can make use of this function to turn on your PC. I like to use this. Other than that, trust computing, this is more like all the enabling on the SHA security banks and such, which I don't touch. AMD CBS itself, this is the only place that I touch is only the NBIO common, which I will set this graphic card. If let's say I'm using on board, right, I'll leave it auto. If I do not want to use this built-in integrated card, right, I use a discrete card, right, I will just enable this and to disable the other one. So this will save energy too. So less the conflict on drivers. Besides this, okay, this I do not touch, but I will show you, probably telling you the firmware and such. And this is the AMD Common Platform module, which I don't touch either. Or probably these are the yeah, you can set the generation of your graphic cards and such on whichever PCIe lane. For example, this, right, I'm using, let's say I'm using a discrete graphic card, I can set it to Gen 4 or Gen 5, not a problem. Now, RAID mode, I don't use this. Thunderbolt support, if let's say you have plugged in, as mentioned earlier on, there is a Thunderbolt connector. If you were to purchase an additional Thunderbolt card, you can enable this, not a problem. Next will be the AMD overclocking, which I often use, based on the fact that I like to use the precision boost overdrive, where you can see that I set all this by myself, lowering down the PPT, because at max it's running about 230, which is, I mean, the temperature is really horrible, so I pull down the power itself, but yet I can run at 5 gig, not a problem. Though I'm I have sacrificed 200 megahertz consistently if I run it by default. So to me 200 hertz I can't really see much, so I'll just leave it at this configuration so I can hit 5 gig, not an issue. And of course the curve optimizer, you can do it on your integrated graphic card on the processor itself, but I don't touch this. The curve optimizer, this is where I set, if I got the time I would to set per call, catching which is the max and such that my processor can do, but at the moment I just run it as all call, which is minus 20. Now next will be the tools itself. Now this is something very interesting. Let me just grab the okay, this one. Now for the ARGB mode, right, as you can see right now, my motherboard over here, instead of installing the polychrome in Windows itself, I can set the mode on UEFI. So let's say I were to do static, okay, maybe not static, let's say I go cycling and I apply all, see? Oh, okay, probably I need to do the colors, sorry about this. So these are the things that I can actually do on the okay, I wonder why this is okay. I'm so sorry about this. I should actually set all the numberings, the pixel colors over here, so you can actually do this, not a problem. Let me just set this back to rainbow. See, I can set to this, not a problem. As in, like, no need to install the application polychrome from ASRock on Windows itself. I can control the ARGB through UEFI and leave it there, so that I don't have any bloatwares, etc., that's running on the background, which is kind of like irritating to me. Then next will be the hardware monitor. Okay, let me just close this down, whereby you can set all the fan speed for your, let's say this is my palm. No, this is not my palm. This is my palm. Yeah, palm normally I'll set it at full speed. Else right now it's actually connected to fan. Let's see, over here, fan chassis 2. So this is running at silent, I believe. Hang on, let me just take a look. Okay, so from here, right, I can set over here, see, it's on silent. I can just set PWM. By default there are some settings over here: silent, standard, performance, or even full speed. Now if I were to set to full speed, right, take a look at the readings above. I can just see from here straight. I don't have to go anywhere else. As you can see over here, this is the one. So it's going to run at full speed. Or I can do like standard, and you'll see that the RPM over here, right, will decrease. See? Or even better, if you want to set, let's say, to a personal curve, right, you can set custom. Then you start to fiddle with all this. So it's all manual key in. I prefer it this way rather than graphs, because graphs is actually taking a lot of time where you use the mouse itself, right? You got to pull the points, and it's very painful. So I prefer to use this as in, like, okay, for example, let's say the temperature, let's say it hits 40 degrees. Okay, I want it to run 70 degrees. I mean, run at 70%. Then from there, right, I can increase and such and so on, so that this will react over here. So this is one thing that I like about this interface so much, that I can control. Not many people like this features, but I just like it. Now I'm going to set it at full speed, leave it at full speed. Security wise, as usual, you can set your supervision password so that people will not access to your UEFI, but at home I won't be using this, so not a issue for me. Now secure boot itself, now this is the part whereby a lot of gamers will have to trigger it, enable, in order to run, I think it's Valorant or something, the game. So this is where you activate the secure boot. I'm not going to activate now. Then for boot itself, right, you can choose boot option. If let's say you have numerous of M.2s, right, with different OS, right, you can select them as the boot option. Then CSM, these are the latency USB connectors, which I don't use anymore, like the PS-2 kind of connection, so I just disable it. Then the rest, as normal, I don't have to explain, like the numlock on, which is always on. I always have my number pad beside. Then full screen enable, fast boot enable, and such. Now I'm going to show you something. Okay, let me just save and boot to Windows. Now as you can see over here, right, take for example, okay, let me just switch to my, oh, not this, let me switch to my, okay, nope, okay, I think I closed the window, that's why. Okay, as you can see, right, some of the motherboard itself, right, when the system is off, the LEDs over here will just leave it on. It will just run. Some of the ASUS board that I've encountered, right, will do this. But for ASRock, right, it's very, very simple. As in, like, once you turn off the system, right, all the lights, everything will be off. Let me just show you. Okay, now this is my system over here. Just an illustration. Now right now it's on, right? It's running. So if I am to shut down the machine right now, which is going to be here, okay, when I shut it down, take a look at the LEDs over here. See, it shuts off totally, so that you won't waste electricity. This is what I feel is good. And there are other things that I like about this board, and I will talk about it. You might be thinking, what's so great about this board? Well, I can tell you why I like this board so much. First of all, look at the amperage of all the fan headers. As you can see over here, I've actually highlighted red, or as in like red square and green square, all this over here. Now, majority of this are at 2 ampere, except for the CPU fan. Taking a look at most fans, right, if you do not take note, okay, for example, this is ARGB, which is 0.12 ampere. If I am to connect 3 fans, it's only 0.36 ampere, and it's below 1 ampere. I can connect to this, not a problem. But what if I were to connect 3 fans that is 0.5 ampere? If you to total up, right, it's 1.5 ampere. And if your motherboard fan header, right, is 1 ampere, which some of the motherboards is all 1 ampere, I wouldn't know why. Probably you need a fan hub. Then you can't connect to this. Once you connect to this 1 ampere, right, drawing at a power of 1.5 ampere, this will definitely blow. As in, like, will melt or blow. So that is one of the reasons why I like this board so much, because all this, right, as you can see in green, are all 2 ampere. So I don't even need to use a hub. I can just connect more than 3 fans at a rating of 0.5 ampere max. So you see, I can just plug to any of this, not a problem, but not this one. But best is that for my gauge, right, experience as in PC building, most of the time I would to make use of any ampere that is below 0.15 ampere, and having good performance airflow, pressure or static airflow, so that you can plug 3 fans on your radiator, then 3 fans at the front or bottom or the rear, things like that. Another thing good about this board is I like the layout of the ARGB connectors, which is 2 at the top, 1 at the bottom. Okay, let me just show you. And also the layout of all the fan connectors, which I'm going to show you on the next graph. As you can see here, right, imagine that this is in the case itself. You have your top radiator with the fans with the ARGBs. You have the front with all your ARGBs, and the bottom and the rear. Now, look at how I do the connection. I don't even need an ARGB hub or a fan hub, because all this rated, right, the fan itself, right, is 2 ampere. And the ARGB, 1 each is at 3 ampere. So running 3 consecutive ARGB connectors, right, it will not blow the connectors over here. So that's why you can see that when I connect, right, okay, the blue ones is in fact ARGB. Now the red one here, this is the fan load. 3 of this, which is 0.12 ampere, it doesn't hurt, which add up to 0.36. You can feed to this CPU fan 1, which is 1 ampere, not a problem. Then the rest, right, in fact, is the same, 0.36. Same goes to the bottom, and same goes to different from the rear is just 0.12 ampere. So as you can see, right, I can connect all the fans connector on the headers itself, not a problem, all the fan headers. And for the ARGB, right, see, as allocated at the top, I can just plug here. At the front, I can plug here. Then at the bottom, I can plug here. And for the rear, right, you can do daisy chain. As I mentioned, right, this one ARGB connector is 3 ampere. So it's more than enough. In fact, when I total up this 4 together, right, it's less than 2 ampere. It's about 1.65 ampere. Besides the load of all the ARGB and the fan headers load itself as like 1 ampere, 2 ampere, and all the ARGB, which is 3 ampere, take a look at the overall layout. It's easy to reach and very easy to do cable management, because at the top you have occupied over here with this, so very short cables. Same goes to the front, you connect over here and connect over here, which is very short path. You don't have to reroute, you know, all over the shop. And at the bottom, same thing, connect direct. You don't even need a very long cable, you just need to cable tie them, manage them properly, and that's it. Same goes to the rear, where else this, right, is actually a hidden cable, which is down here if you see. So it routed over here, so it gives a very clean cut. You won't even see the cables at all. So this is why I like to pre-pan everything. And to find out more about the board besides its performance, I will see all this kind of layouts, things like the amperage on the fan load on each header, and also the ARGB location if I'm using ARGB fans or such. So this is my way of planning a system itself to see the layout besides the performance. Now besides that, right, something which I want to highlight more about this board. I love this board so much. Reason being, right, in most X670E motherboard, they have 2 chipset. As you can see over here, they are part side by side with a very big heatsink, meaning to say all the heat are actually channeling on one focal point instead of separate. Having 2 different X670 chip at a different location, which is one over here, one over here, it helps to sustain the performance of the processor speed. And another thing good about this motherboard itself, it comes with a anti-sag bracket, which is known as the graphic card holder, as you can see over here. So you attach this to the motherboard while you're mounting into the case. When you mount the horizontal card over here, you make use of this anti-sag bracket. As you can see, you can slide up and down to leave up the height that you need to support, so that it will reduce the stress on the PCI card over here. I mean the PCI-E slot, though it's actually strengthened with a armor plating. So this helps a lot. Now, bonus tips. Based on the fact that a lot fear that when you place the radiator at the top, especially 280 or 420 or even wider, I'm not saying wider, I mean it's like thicker radiators and such, right, you might be wondering, will it hit the side VRM and the rear VRM? Now, take for example, I'll give you the measurements of this motherboard itself, which I don't think any reviewers will actually do this, and these are not mentioned on the website itself. So I hope that in future, right, if I have more motherboards to, you know, do the open view, right, I will do the measurements for you and to let you guys know. For example, let's say you are buying a case and you do have the clearance measurement of that case, then you will take a look at the motherboard, right? If they give you the dimension from here, which is touching the motherboard, all the way to the back RAM heatsink, I mean the VRM heatsink is 43mm in height. Okay, and the standoff from your case to the motherboard itself, right, is 5mm. Okay, take note, this is 43mm at the rear, and at the side VRM itself is 35mm. Imagine that you are buying a case and you got the measurements. For example, over here, as I mentioned here, okay, this is the top of the case, and these are the VRMs at the side, and this is the RAM over here. So for example, let's say you're using a 240 or 360, right, and you know the measurements is 60mm clearance. Now, can you fit this? Definitely. Can you fit this? Definitely. What if your clearance over here is only 45 centimeters from the motherboard standoff, not the motherboard, right? From the motherboard standoff to the motherboard is 5 millimeter, plus from the motherboard to here, the clearance is 45 millimeters. So if I am to take the first one over here, right, which is 43 millimeters, and below, as I mentioned, there is a 5 millimeter clearance as in like for the standoff between your case to your motherboard. When you total up 5 millimeter to this 43, right, it's 48. So having to say this, right, if you know this measurement is 45, right, I will not purchase this case at all because there are no clearance for me to put my radiator and my fans. I hope you have enjoyed what I've shared with you, and I do apologize that this video is rather lengthy, because most of the reviewers out there, right, they will just show the board, build it on the system, and to show you the performance and chart and so. But I deliberately took the time to narrow down certain details. I hope that it's actually not lengthy for you, and if you do find that it's useful, do click on the like button. If not, you find that I'm too lengthy, please comment. Now, having to say so, right, thank you very much to Tech Dynamic who have sponsored this first motherboard, I should say, that I got, and it is my first time doing a motherboard open view. So for those of you who are actually new to my channel, and if you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.